Hi, my name's Paul Thomas, and I want to share this really fleshy Christmas poem with you called Incarnation. But first, what you need to know is that it's set in a world that'd been completely taken over 300 years prior by Alexander the Great, who saw himself as an incarnation of Achilles from Homer's epic war poem, the Iliad. Now, for Alexander, the Iliad was sacred scripture. He got his copy of it as a gift from his teacher Aristotle. He slept with it under his pillow next to his dagger, and he was never far from it for the rest of his life. He acted out its scenes in real wars, exceeding the wartime deeds of his gods. By his mid-20s, Alexander was lord of all Asia, pharaoh of Egypt, the king of kings who united East and West, and for the first time, people were envisioning a world ruled by a single king. Nobody could imagine how Alexander did all this, unless what people said about him was true, that he was the son of Zeus. Now, fast forward 300 years, and a devotee of Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, takes over the world. He's stabbed to death. The Roman Senate declares him a god, puts his statue in the Pantheon, and his successor, Augustus Caesar, propagandizes all this, minting coins bearing his own image, stamped DVF for Divi Filius, Son of God. Now, none of this needed to be explained to a first century audience, just like I don't need to tell you this is on YouTube or we're using the internet. It was the world they lived in, and it was all a plot point of a much bigger story. The story the Bible tells of God wooing all of humankind to be his bride in a world where we humans have lost the plot. And never had we lost the plot worse than now that people said Julius Caesar was a god, Augustus Caesar, son of God, and the poets and prophets writing God's love story had put down their pens 400 years ago. God's whole love story was in serious danger of a tragic end. The only thing left to do was go in and woo his bride in person. Incarnation. And so God wove his way into our story. A blind bridegroom, now bound for glory, entered her world of separation and shame, anger, fear, hatred, violence, and pain, to right the human wrongs of hatred based on race, different religious roots, nation, creed, or place. He'd cast a vision of a kingdom ruled by God alone, no Caesar's cloak or demon wings, not a single earthly throne. He'd conquer demons and their legions, conquer death and conquer Rome, and show humankind how to live in love with God as their one true home. He'd show the humans that their lives have a deeper, richer meaning, an adventure to revise, a world worth redeeming. He'd show them that the battle to be fought was a war with their darkest forces, and that love could change their plot if their hearts could change their courses. He'd help his blind bride see, he'd woo her from within, show her the love that was meant to be, and save her from her sin. He'd woo her at a wedding, point her where her tale was heading, and from human hearts he'd raise a force with none but a single weapon, the love that's at life's very source on an earth that's hosting heaven. And so it was that God's light divine entered into a world of his own design, living water flowing through an amniotic sac, his body breathing ruach as his blood gave spent breath back. His world now a dark and formless void, he waited day by day, a baby boy who'd be destroyed if Herod had his way. He found umbrage under a fleshy fountain, like the cloud that covered Sinai mountain, a dark royal purple, red magenta, hovering overhead placenta, made in part of maternal cells and in part of the babies too. It was one of living water's strangest wells, the way God made things new. It sent him manna, love, and oxygen, to God all one and the same, ruach hormones, antigens, through a blood-red corded vein. Through two arteries of blue, spent breath was whisked away to the cloud that made things new and kept dark death at bay. It sent cellular emissaries into his mother's flesh, microchimeric baby cells that spread like yeast in bread. Some took nest inside her body, organs, blood, and brain, there in her to live in love, some forever to remain. Such are the ties between mom and babe, the new inside the old, bound by cells that plant like seeds, a new creation to unfold. Then with womb wall capillaries pulsing like lightning all around, and the pressures of his world convulsing like legions crashing down, time blurred by beneath his mother's droning groan, the mysteries of love in pain betrayed by every moan. And Mary felt her body break, her insides cleave in two by 5 tectonic cranial plates, as birth's intrinsic violence grew. There were more waves, more moans, and a lot more pushing, sweat, screams, groans, and more head crushing, wave by wave, more dilation. Then at long last, a coronation. Then light and dark, as they always shall, they found their separate ways, and an infant emerged from a rebirth canal under starlight's stable rays. 5 bones bloomed, Joseph aghast at what he was seeing, the baby boy that God assumed to weave his love into our being. And lowly shepherds tending flocks nearby heard angels sing that God was nigh, heard hosts of angels praising, saying, may his glory, peace, and favor reign. Persian magi saw his star and came to see him from afar and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, royal gifts of great expense, with worship to confer. And all these marvels Mary treasured, and she stored them in her heart, love within her without measure. Now she'd have another start. She finally felt it must be true, what she'd dreamt some months before, the things God's angels only knew about the favor of the Lord, and the baby nearly at her breast, who'd be given David's throne, to lead us to a kingdom blessed by the greatest wedding ever known. And now there were 3 to register for the census of Augustus Caesar, Divi Filius, Son of God.